Morning and welcome to Daily Focus. I know I'm a little bit late this morning, but I thank the Lord for another day to serve Him. This week in Michigan is going to be a little bit more realistic in the sense that I think we've got rain and snow in the forecast, and it's going to be a little chilly, but we're not complaining because God gave us an amazing winter, and it was certainly mild, and we've had some wonderfully warm days. And the Lord knows what He's doing. We may need some of these cooler days to slow the budding process to make sure we have healthier trees. And but I'll leave that to the biologist. And but I do remember from my farming days that that process of the cool springs and the wetness is all part of that maturing and bringing them to full maturity. And so there is a reason for it, and we will trust the Lord. Well, in Daniel chapter 10, 11, and 12 are really the last vision, and chapter 10 is just setting the stage for it. So I'm not going to read this entire chapter. You can read it on your own. But I'm reminded of Ezekiel, where God said, I sought for a man to stand in the gap, a man who would make up the hedge. And we know from the context that sometimes these verses are taken out of context and they're referred to sending missionaries to the mission field. Sometimes it's referred to calling people into full-time Christian work. That's really not the context. The context of Ezekiel in that context is God is looking for a prayer warrior, somebody who is going to stand before God on behalf of someone else. And boy, we need more of that today. I don't know your prayer life. You don't know mine. But boy, I do know this. We need people who are before the throne of grace and regularly beseeching the heart of God and presenting the needs of our country, the needs of our churches, the needs of specific people. And God is saying, I sought for somebody who would stand in the gap. And really what chapter 10 is God basically saying, I found one, and he stood in the gap for his people, the Jewish people, the people of Israel, and I heard him, and I responded to him. And I think that that's an amazing reality, because what chapter 10 does is it reminds us that it's not just flesh and blood. What chapter 10 is going to give us a little glimpse is the spiritual realm of warfare that is going on in the world today that we don't see. We see some of the effects of it, and some of the depravity put on display is because of the forces of evil. And there is absolutely a spiritual war going on. We do indeed, as Ephesians 6 says, we fight against spiritual wickedness in high places. But in chapter 10 and verse 1, it says, in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, and this thing was true. But the time appointed was long, and he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. I immediately find it interesting that it's the third year of Cyrus and Daniel is still in captivity. We know Ezra made it very clear that in the first year of Cyrus, that the captives in Babylon or in Medo-Persia at this point were released to go back to Jerusalem if they wanted to. It is concerning that even though they were able to go back to Jerusalem, that many didn't want to go back to Jerusalem. They kind of liked what they had in captivity. And it reminds me a little bit of how people are free from the dominion of their flesh, but choose to live under that bondage because they like it better rather than living in the liberty and freedom that is found in walking in the Spirit and yielding to the Spirit of God. And I guess my question to you is are you living in bondage to this world? Are you living in bondage to your flesh, or have you lived in freedom that comes from surrendering to the Spirit's control? letting him have his will and way in our lives. And then the question is, well, then why is Daniel there? And I think the answer is going to be found in the rest of this chapter, though I believe that many of the Israelites were too complacent, too lazy, too familiar, had built an appetite for the things of Babylon and Persia. And so they didn't want to go back. They kind of liked this life that was there. And they didn't want the will of God. They didn't want to go back to their homeland. And that bothered Daniel. And I believe that one of the reasons Daniel stayed, even though he was an old man at this point, the reason why he stayed was to answer the call that somebody has to stand in the gap for these people. And so he prayed, he fasted, he mourned. He was in physical denial. He was absolutely willing to go without, to show God how serious he was for his people. And it says that after he had fasted, after he had prayed and mourned for these specific 3 weeks, that God is going to hear him. And verse number 10, and behold, a hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee am I now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. And he said unto me, fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. In other words, God sent an angel specifically, and I know he doesn't do that in this dispensation, but he did during the Old Testament. And he sent an angel specifically to Daniel to say, Daniel, God has heard your prayers. God has seen your contrite heart, your broken heart. He has seen your mourning. And you have gotten his attention, and he has sent me personally to minister to you. In verse number 19, and said, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto thee, be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened and said, let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. I think to myself, boy, what prayer warriors mean to us, how important they are to us pastors, how important they are to us as brothers and sisters in Christ, praying for one another, standing in the gap for one another, beseeching God for one another. And wow, what a testimony that God would send an angel personally to encourage Daniel. And Daniel says, you know what? You have strengthened me. You have given me the strength that I need to face the challenges, to trust in my God. You have strengthened my faith. And boy, I can't think of anything better for people that are going through deep waters and tough times is to have somebody praying that God would visit them and strengthen them spiritually. I don't know what you pray about. I don't know how often you pray, but let this be a challenge to all of us to be willing to answer the call to stand in the gap for one another. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. I'll look forward to seeing you again.